Hello and welcome back to my farm. Now, I wanted to share something with you today about a bit of realism I found on this game that, quite frankly, I've never ever discovered before, and chances are none of you have ever discovered it either. So in order to discover this piece of realism, you've got to be playing on a map that has multiple different types of grass on it, not just grass as one crop, and you've also got to be playing on using the REA Wheels mod. And most people don't use the REA Wheel mod. It's not a very popular mod, and the reason it's not a very popular mod is because it doesn't play well with a number of other mods. So, for an example, 4D modding make probably some of the best mowers out there for Farming Simulator 22, but unfortunately his mowers don't play well with the REA Wheel mod. So if you choose to use the REA Wheels mod, you're choosing not to use his mowers and things like that. But anyway, for the sake of what I'm about to explain to you, I'm going to show you, we're going to talk about, this map actually has 4 different types of grass, but we're just going to talk about 2 of them today. So we're going to talk about this one here, which is a very, very short grass. This is fully grown here, and this one can be painted on like this, but it's once you've painted it on, you can still cut it. You don't get very much grass from cutting it, so it's really not worth cutting this grass if you're hoping to make bales. But this is, as long as it grows, and as you can see, it's got lots and lots of flowers in it. Okay, so, and we'll call that short grass for the sake of what I'm about to show you and explain to you. And another type of grass which I will show you, so we'll just sprint down here to one of my cow paddocks with grass that's grown nicely in it. This one here, this grass here, as you can see, it's very, very, very long, and it does have flowers in it, but not as many as the short grass has. You can see there some white flowers and some yellow flowers, and this grass is so long you can actually see it bending under our feet, and you'll see it bending under vehicle wheels. So we'll call this one long grass. Now, the thing I want to share with you in this video was that in real life I have a suspicion, a theory, that there's nothing more slippery in life than long wet grass. Now you're probably thinking, well, I don't know, oil on a wet motorway is pretty slippery, and if you've ever ridden a motorbike then you'd know that, and I have ridden motorbikes, so I do know the oil on a wet motorway can be very, very slippery, but trust me, long wet grass can be worse. To put that into perspective, if you've got a beefed up 4-wheel drive, and I've actually seen this, witnessed it firsthand, you can have a beefed up 4-wheel drive pickup truck or something that's capable of going rock climbing. You can climb rocks, you can wade through mud that's up to the bottom of the windows, you can do all this sort of thing without fear, yet stick it on a slightly uphill portion of long wet grass and it'll get stuck and you end up needing to, and this is why I love the REA Wheels mod, because you can dig into the mud and things like that. So obviously I needed a bit of a run up there. Okay. Anyway, put this big 4-wheel drive onto some long wet grass that's slightly uphill facing, and it'll get stuck. And something I discovered purely by accident, and I'll explain why in a second, is that the different types of grass in this game have different abilities for grip. And this long grass doesn't grip very well. So how I discovered it, if we go to the map for a second. Okay, so on this map, we'll just bring it down to my farm down here, and I'll bring it to a different view so I can kind of show you a little bit better. Okay, so these 6 green paddocks here, 243, 244, 245, 246, 247 and 252, they used to be the paddocks I would always mow for making bales. So that's my silage and my hay making paddocks. And then all these other ones here, these other 3 green ones and all these yellow ones here, all the ones I would have my cows in. And although I've only got 4 paddocks of cows, the reason I've got so many cow paddocks is because these ones up here are actually up a steep hill and I can't get up there in winter time. So what I do is during the summer months I graze my cows in these uphill paddocks here. I call them my summer paddocks. In winter months I bring them down to these paddocks, which I call my winter paddocks, and graze them there instead. But a while ago I decided that I got sick and tired of always just mowing these 6 paddocks here and always only having cows in these paddocks around here. So what I ended up doing is I ended up putting troughs in every single paddock. So that means every single paddock, with the exception of these 2 of mine here, which are, what are they, corn at the moment, I think? Yes, they are, they're corn. So with the exception of my 2 corn paddocks there, every single grass paddock you see there is a potential cow paddock because it has the water trough and the food trough in it. Okay, and that means that every single paddock on my farm is a potential paddock to be mown as well. So I'm not always mowing the same 6 paddocks over and over again. I can mow different ones. So when I turned my cow paddocks into cow/mowing paddocks instead of purely cow paddocks, I ploughed them all up and I planted the long grass here. So I decided that since I was going to potentially be mowing all of them, I would want long grass in them instead of just short grass. I previously had short grass, which you can see just on the left hand side of the fence there. You can see some short grass. You can see the difference there quite easily. And this hill here, if we're looking up here, which doesn't look too steep from where we're parked right now, but trust me, it's a very steep hill. I discovered that my little Ford tractors here, although they could pull this TMR mixing wagon up the hill when I had short grass in it, when I had long grass in it, they couldn't, and they would just sit there and wheel spin and dig in. And even just this little bit of uphill straight ahead of me here, I couldn't get up in the Ford tractor, so I ended up having to attach the TMR mixer wagon onto the big Fiat tractor or the big Steyr tractor instead, which I didn't really like, because the whole point of the bigger tractors was I was only going to use those on the crop fields. I wanted to use the Fords, which are still in the small tractor category, so only 105 horse or something like that. One's 100 and one's 105, I think. But I'm going to treat them as my big tractors for pulling the TMR wagon around and things in terms of the cows. So the way I got around it, most people, if they discovered after planting the new grass they could no longer get the tractor up the hill, they would get a more powerful tractor. But not I. What I've done instead is I've put these mud tracks here. You can see it right there. Okay, that has more grip for the wheels than the long grass around it does. So in the uphill bits where it's just too steep for my tractor, I've made these tracks, so I follow up like this. See, so as you can see, I can get the tractor up here. I'm still doing 5 miles an hour up here, in fact. But trust me, if I'd gone either side of that track on the grass, I would not have got up there. The tractor would have dug in and got stuck. And I thought, heck, that's really, really ultra realistic, and I really like that. So I'll show you where else I've had to put tracks in a moment. I'm just going to empty into this one, and then I'll go back and get the next load of TMR, and I'm going to show you something else there where I've got some other tracks. But yeah, since discovering that, I am really, really pleased with that, because it adds a whole other level of skill to getting around my farm, because you have to find those mud patches. And to me, okay, admittedly I've painted those mud patches on, but I actually think they look quite realistic, because often, you know, farmers will go exactly the same route through a paddock, you know, from one gate to the next or something. So the grass that's always constantly being driven over will actually die off and things, and you end up with, you know, tyre tracks of dried dirt or mud just like that in the paddock, because it's the same piece of paddock the farmer's always driving over. So yeah, to my personal opinion, I think it actually looks quite realistic having those mud tracks on the steep part, and so I really like it. Now I'm just loading up the next trailer full of TMR. Yeah, so that's 1 part hay, 2 parts so I don't put straw into my TMR. I do 1 part hay, 2 parts silage, and I do enjoy manually stacking bales and things, but not when there's too many. So what I do is my hay and my straw I manually stack and manually bring in, and my silage here I use one of these auto stacking sheds, so I just bring it up and tip it in, and it automatically goes into those big piles, and I can pull it out like that, a couple of bales at a time. and unwrap them to put them into the mixer wagon. So that's what we're doing here. We're making a trailer for a TMR. Oh, bigger. That happens sometimes, I'm sorry. One of those 2 bales has just gone back into the shed again, so let's see if I can grab another one out, and I'm sure it won't be the same one that comes out, but at some point I will go and grab a bale out of the shed, and it will bring out an unwrapped bale, which is the one that I just accidentally put back into the shed. Yeah, see, it's going to be a wrapped one now. I'll just unwrap that. So there's one unwrapped bale somewhere in the middle of that shed, and at some point when I put out 2 bales for my mixing wagon, we'll bring out one that's already been unwrapped and one that's still wrapped, and that's fine, I don't mind, it doesn't really matter at all. Yeah. Now, I apologise it's been so long since I've done a video. It's coming into summer weather here, and I've put on a bit of weight over winter, which I do most winters, especially as I'm getting older. So since it's coming into summer weather, I'm getting out on the bike a lot more to try and lose my winter weight as it was, and also because I really enjoy cycling. So yeah, unfortunately it does mean that I don't have as much time for watching YouTube videos, I don't have as much time for recording YouTube videos, or indeed even just for doing farming, because I'm out on my bike a lot more now that summer weather's upon us, and I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. So I'll try and get videos out most weeks, but no promises, we'll just see how it goes. During the summer I've got more important things than to make videos sometimes. Okay, so now we go and jump back into this little Ford here, and what we're going to do is bring it around here. So I need to get up to the top of the hill this time to feed the cows up there, but I'm going to stop here and go for a walk, and the reason I'm doing that is because there's a gate up here before we get to the top of the hill, and if I stop to open that gate, there is no way, absolutely no way, that Ford tractor's going to get going again from a standstill. It's just going to dig into the dirt there. So yeah, these dirt tracks, the tractors will still dig into them, but they do offer more grip than the long grass does, so it won't dig in quite as quickly as it will if I'm driving on the grass. So now we go back to the tractor. There, I've opened that gate. And almost there, here we go. Okay, now we can get a bit of a run up. Now, you're going to have to take my word for this, but I'm going to be full throttle the whole way up this hill. So if we're going a bit slow, it's not because I've stepped off the gas, okay? I am foot to the floor right now. As you can see, we're doing 3 miles an hour currently. Now, most people faced with something like this, got up to 4 miles an hour now, would say, stuff this for fun and just go and buy a more powerful tractor. Whereas my attitude is, yes, this is actually quite a lot of fun. You know, we're not even on a track yet because it's not until the hill gets a wee bit steeper that I really need that track. So that's why I started it. But you can see where I'm aiming for the beginning of the track now, and hopefully we get to the beginning of that track before we get stuck. It's not looking promising. Oh, we might just make it. Oh, yep, we're on the track. So now the track's got a bit more grip, especially once that trailer gets off the track as well, off the grass. Here you go, now we're picking up a bit more speed. 3, 4, 5 mile an hour, 6 mile an hour. Oh, now we're really going somewhere. 6 miles an hour. But as I said, if I came off this track now onto the grass, then the tractor would just dig in straight away and I'd be stuck fast. And that's because of the REA Wheels mod, and because I'm using the long grass in this paddock and not the short grass. So we just keep the pedal to the metal, so pick up as much momentum as we can here, because we've got another steep-ish bit coming up. We're on the grass again. Now, as I said, most people would probably not find this fun at all, and they'll be like, yeah, no, I definitely need a more powerful tractor or a smaller, lighter trailer, and this is already, I think, the smallest mixing wagon trailer that you can get, so good luck finding a smaller, lighter trailer to pull. And yeah, I could get a more powerful track, but I don't want to. I like these little Fords, and I haven't even got the most powerful version of each one, but I like the way they go. I enjoy this. So now getting through the gate and doing okay here. We're still at 3 miles an hour, so that's alright. Yep, we're doing okay. Now we're back onto the grass again. We're still heading uphill, but it's not quite so steep here, so the tractor is going on the grass still. So while we're heading up to the next gate and the next patch of mud, dirt track to give me a bit more grip, I had a friend who, because I had a complaint that I never knew what to talk about in these videos. So one of my good friends sent me a long list of things, of ideas I could talk about. Now I looked through the list and 99% of them are things that, yep, I'm more than happy to talk about and share. There's probably only a couple of things I won't. He asked me a couple of questions about my job, and because of some secrecy and stuff involved, I can't really answer questions about my job, but I can answer most of these questions, so I'll happily do so. So I'm just going to randomly answer different questions. Now this one here is not quite so steep right here, so I can come to a standstill, and I will be able to get going again from the standstill. Okay. But the questions, I'm not going to answer them in any particular order. I'm just going to be a bit more random with them, and whatever I feel like answering on the day, that's what I'll talk about. One of his questions was about Whitlock sauce, because I've mentioned Whitlock sauce once or twice, and a couple of other YouTubers have mentioned Whitlock sauce because I've mentioned it, and he wanted to know what the story was with the sauce and things. So we're off the mud track again now, onto the grass once more. So, the Whitlock sauce. Now, to tell you the story about the Whitlock sauce, it was a story that I initially thought I might not share because it involves talking about parts of my family tree that are perhaps more of, what do you call it? Skeletons in the closet. But then I figured, well, actually there's some very, very funny stories to tell around the whole Whitlock sauce thing, and if any of you have looked into your family tree, and I certainly have, it's something I've taken some interest in, and so I've looked at my family tree a bit and things. Most family trees will have skeletons in the closet at some point, either someone getting pregnant outside of wedlock, which was very frowned upon, or something else. So the story I'm going to share about the Whitlock sauce does involve a wee bit of skeletons in the closet, and I'm sorry, but you know, all families have them, so that's the way it is. So how the Whitlocks first came to New Zealand, it starts with that. Okay, the Whitlocks were English originally. Obviously I'm New Zealand born and bred, as are my parents and things, but originally the Whitlock family came from England, and the reason we came to New Zealand is that we owed a lot of money. You know, the family owed a lot of money in the UK and they couldn't afford to pay it, so I understand they stowed away on a ship in the dead of night, came to New Zealand in order to avoid having to pay the money they owed. I may have to end up putting some more mud tracks in this paddock to help me get a bit more grip, because this really isn't wanting to. You can see how it's just digging into the paddock there. So you can see how deep it's sunk in there. But actually, I think I'm far enough away from the, I am too, yes. I'm far enough away from the food troughs, so I can probably actually just back down the hill to them now. So we'll do that. So yes, that's how the Whitlocks came to be in New Zealand in the first place. Now, the Whitlocks, when they arrived here, were publicans, and I understand they were mostly publicans in the UK as well. So, opened up a number of pubs in New Zealand, and we settled in Whanganui originally, and that's where the pubs were opened. Yep. And there's a lot of funny stories about these pubs and things. So my great-great-great-grandfather used to brew a lot of illegal alcohol to sell in this pub. Rather than buying alcohol, adding a markup and reselling it, he'd actually brew his own. And there's one story about the police doing a raid on the pub, and my great-great-great-grandmother was on the staircase with the broom sort of fighting the police off, stopping them from getting up the stairs, while her husband, my great-great-great-grandfather, was upstairs frantically pouring all of this illegal home brew out the window into the dirt street below so that they wouldn't be caught with this illegal alcohol on the premises and charged for it. So I thought that was quite an amusing story. Anyway, the Whitlocks, being publicans and things, a lot of them were alcoholics and drank way too much, especially since they're brewing their own alcohol. And it's why later generations of Whitlocks often won't drink at all, or drink very little, because of some of the drunken antics and the likes in our family tree. Anyway, because the Whitlocks were brewing all this illegal alcohol, we had these big steel vats, and when alcohol wasn't being brewed, these steel vats were sitting and doing nothing. And if there's one thing a Whitlock hates, it's see money being wasted, so like something sitting there not being used, not generating income when it should be. So what my great-great-great-grandparents started doing between brewing batches of illegal alcohol to sell in the pub is they started making sauces and pickles. So it was just something else to use these vats for when they weren't being used for their real purpose, as it were. And that's how the sauces and pickles came about. So the Whitlock sauce was very famous and well known in all of New Zealand, and I understand it was also exported to Australia. And I have personally worked in the pickle factory, the sauce and pickle factory myself as well. I worked there when I was going to I went to Polytech after I finished high school, and I used to work there in the afternoons and evenings. But this sauce factory was sold off to Cerebus, which is an Australian company, a few decades ago now, so I'm not involved in the sauce factory in any way whatsoever now or anything. Now, it's interesting, my father still has the original Whitlock sauce recipe, because the sauce that's sold as Whitlock sauce now isn't actually done to the original recipe. The original recipe was very labour intensive, and so it would be too expensive to make it to the original recipe now. But my father still has the original recipe, and I'm sure if I asked for it, he'd give it to me. But another interesting story says my father still likes to make his own Whitlock sauce to the original recipe, but he was telling me that it's very hard to get it actually tasting right. Now the reason why is the recipe that's used is one for making it in commercial quantities. Now anyone that's ever done any cooking or baking will know, let's say for example, I don't know, let's say you're making a meal and the instructions, the recipe says it's for 4 people, and let's say you're cooking for 8. Well, that's easily enough done. You just double all the ingredients in the recipe. So if it says 2 teaspoons of salt, you'd put in 4 teaspoons of salt, and so on. But sometimes when you're trying to do it the other way around and bring something down from, so instead of making a commercial batch of sauce, you're making just enough sauce for your own personal consumption, it's a lot harder to do. So for example, one of the ingredients is 4 crates of apples. Now when we're talking about crates of apples, we're talking about big wooden crates, probably about twice the size of the crates of saplings, tree saplings in this game, so twice that size at least. We're talking huge crates that you can only lift with a forklift. Okay? So if you're wanting, if the recipe says 4 crates of apples and you're trying to do it in a much smaller quantity, well, you can reduce that to 4 apples instead. But if you reduce 4 crates of apples to 4 apples, then what do you reduce 2 sacks of onions to? Because obviously you can use Google to look up how many kilometres there are in a mile, or how many kilograms there are to a pound, or whatever you want like that. But there is no conversion ratio for sacks to pallets and things like this. So it does take a bit of guesswork to reduce the recipe down to personal quantity size rather than commercial quantity size, and that's why it doesn't always come out quite 100% the same as the original sauce, just because you're doing it in much smaller quantities. Oh, I was going to share one other story about the Whitlock sauce that was quite funny. Well, quite funny now looking back on it. Certainly wouldn't have been funny at the time. And that is that my great-great-great-grandfather was actually one of the very first drink driving deaths in New Zealand. And how this came about was back in the days of horses and carts, before there were motor cars. Every Friday night he used to, he had a horse-drawn wagon, and he'd ride that on his way home from work. He would stop at a pub and he'd have a few drinks. This would be followed by a few more drinks, which would be followed by a few more drinks, and followed by a few more drinks, until he got to the stage where he could hardly stand and he was normally kicked out of said pub, at which time he would stumble back to the horse and cart, clamber up onto the cart where he'd normally fall asleep, and the horse knew its own way home from the pub, because of course he was there every single Friday night without fail, so the horse knew its own way home from the pub, and the horse would just walk home with the wagon attached behind and with my great-great-great-grandfather on the wagon. Anyway, one evening my great-great-great-grandfather climbed onto the wagon as per usual on the Friday night after drinking himself silly. The horse left to go home. Now, it's unsure whether the horse was going a bit faster than it normally did, or whether perhaps my great-great-great-grandfather was just standing up when it got to this corner or something. Anyway, the horse went around one of the corners that it had to go around on the way home, and my great-great-great-grandfather fell off the wagon, both literally and figuratively. Probably heard the saying, falling off the wagon, and he broke his arm, and he died a week later from a broken arm. Of course, no one would die from a broken arm nowadays, but that's what happened. And so that's actually one of the first ever recorded drink driving deaths in New Zealand. If you can call it driving, really, I suppose the horse was more driving itself. So that was an amusing bit of story about that. So yeah, that was a story I thought I'd share, because I was asked to talk a bit more about the Whitlock sauces and pickles and how it came about and how it started and things. As I said, it's not a family run business any longer. It was sold, my father sold the business before I was old enough to take it over or anything, and I'm not surprised. As I said, it was a very, very labour intensive sauce to make, so it would have been very, very difficult, if not impossible, to do it to the original recipe now and make it profitable because of the labour involved in it. But that's my story, and so yeah, I've told you about the sauce factory, and I've told you about the realism thing I discovered with this game, where different lengths of grass actually offer different levels of grip for your tractor tyres. But as I said, you've got to have different types of, you've got to have a mat with more than one type of grass available on it, and you've got to use the REA Wheels mod, which isn't a very popular mod just because of its unfriendly nature in terms of playing with other mods, in order to really discover that. But that's what I thought I'd share, and I'll try and get another video out to you when I can. But yeah, it could be, I don't know, another week or so, just because I am out on the bike a lot more now that summer weather's here. But I'll leave this video here for now. Thank you, and bye.